She was trapped in an elevator with a stranger and found her true love without knowing that he was. The glossy marble floor of the Manhattan high-rise reflected Natalie Ashwood's frustration back at her as she strode across the lobby, her heels clicking against the polished surface with determined precision. The meeting she'd just left had been nothing short of a disaster, with a client who seemed more interested in questioning her expertise than listening to her suggestions. She caught a glimpse of herself in the mirrored walls, dark curls twisted into a high bun, amber eyes bright with determination despite her exhaustion, and her favorite blazer doing little to hide the tension in her shoulders. At 28, Natalie had fought hard for her position at one of New York's top architecture firms, but days like this made her question everything. She absently touched the small feather tattoo on her left wrist, a reminder of her grandmother's words. Freedom isn't about flying away, baby girl. It's about knowing where you belong. Right now, she didn't feel like she belonged anywhere. The elevator bank loomed ahead, its brass doors gleaming under the afternoon sun streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Natalie pressed the up button, checking her phone for the 100th time. No messages from the office, which was probably a good thing. She wasn't in the mood for more criticism. Just as she was about to give up and take the stairs to the 20th floor, the elevator dinged. The doors slid open, and Natalie stepped forward, only to nearly collide with someone doing the same from the opposite direction. "Oh, I'm sorry," they said in unison. Natalie looked up, way up, into the clearest blue eyes she'd ever seen. The man before her was tall, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. His brown hair was perfectly styled, but something about the way he kept adjusting his vintage watch suggested he wasn't as composed as he appeared. "Please, after you," he gestured politely, his voice carrying a hint of Boston in its cultured tones. Natalie entered the elevator, hyper-aware of his presence as he followed. The doors closed with a soft whoosh, and she pressed the button for the 20th floor. He reached past her for the 25th, his movement bringing with it a subtle whiff of what she recognized as sauvage. The elevator began its ascent, and Natalie tried to focus on her phone, responding to emails she'd been avoiding, anything to distract from the magnetic pull of the stranger beside her. He was doing the same, his long fingers tapping efficiently on his screen. Then, without warning, the elevator shuddered. The lights flickered once, twice, and went out. Emergency lights kicked in, casting everything in a dim blue glow, and the elevator ground to a complete stop. "You've got to be kidding me," Natalie muttered, immediately pressing the emergency button. Nothing happened. She pressed it again, harder this time. "I don't think attacking it will help," the stranger said, amusement coloring his voice. Natalie turned to face him, one eyebrow raised. "Do you have a better suggestion, Mr. William?" he offered, adjusting his watch again. "And no, I suppose I don't." "Natalie," she replied, sliding down to sit on the elevator floor, her back against the wall. At his surprised look, she shrugged. "What? These heels are killing me, and who knows how long we'll be stuck here." A moment's hesitation, then William loosened his tie and joined her on the floor, maintaining a respectful distance. "Fair point, though I have to say, this isn't how I expected my afternoon to go." "Join the club," Natalie laughed, the sound slightly bitter. "This is just the cherry on top of an absolutely fantastic day." "That bad? Let's just say if one more wealthy client tells me they have a vision while completely ignoring my professional expertise, I might consider a career change." William's mouth twitched. "Ah, the joys of client relations. What field are you in?" "Architecture." "You?" "Technology," he said simply, and something in his tone made Natalie think there was more to it, but she didn't push. They fell into silence, but it wasn't entirely uncomfortable. The emergency lights cast strange shadows, making the small space feel almost intimate. Natalie found herself studying William's profile, the strong line of his jaw, the slight furrow between his brows as he checked his watch again. "Nervous habit?" she asked, nodding toward the vintage timepiece. William looked startled, then sheepish. "That obvious? Huh? It was my grandfather's. I tend to fidget with it when I'm not in control of a situation. Being stuck in an elevator would definitely qualify." Natalie smiled. "At least we're not alone, though I suppose I could be stuck with worse company. You haven't tried to mansplain architecture to me yet, so you're already ahead of my last client." That drew a genuine laugh from William, the sound rich and unexpected. "I wouldn't dare. The extent of my architectural knowledge comes from playing with building blocks as a kid. Legos are actually a great introduction to spatial reasoning," Natalie said. warming to the topic. I used to create entire cities in my room in Brooklyn, drove my parents crazy, but they never stopped encouraging me. A Brooklyn girl, huh? I should have guessed. You have that. Authenticity about you. Is that a polite way of saying I don't quite fit in this fancy building? No, William said seriously, turning to face her fully. It's a compliment. Trust me. In my world, authenticity is rare enough to be remarkable. Something in his gaze made Natalie's heart skip a beat. The air between them seemed to charge with possibility, and she found herself leaning slightly closer without meaning to. The moment was broken by the sudden crackle of the elevator's intercom. "Hello, is anyone in there?" Natalie jumped up, pressing the call button. "Yes, we're here. We're working on the power issue now. Should have you out in about 15 minutes. Are you both okay?" "We're fine," William answered, standing as well. He'd moved closer during the exchange, and Natalie was acutely aware of his presence behind her. "Good to hear, sir." "Hang tight." The intercom went silent, and Natalie turned around, only to find herself inches from William. Up close, she could see flecks of grey in his blue eyes, a small scar near his temple, the slight imperfection that made his features human rather than merely handsome. 15 minutes, she said softly, not stepping back. "What should we talk about?" William's eyes dropped to her lips for a fraction of a second. "Tell me more about Brooklyn. What made you want to become an architect?" And so, in the dim blue light of a stuck elevator, Natalie found herself opening up to a stranger about her dreams, her frustrations, her love for creating spaces that meant something. William listened intently, asking questions that showed he was genuinely interested, not just being polite. When the light suddenly came back on and the elevator lurched into motion, it felt too soon. They both straightened, adjusting clothes and retrieving dropped phones. The spell of intimacy broken by fluorescent reality. The elevator reached the 20th floor, and Natalie stepped out, turning back for one last look. "It was nice meeting you, William." "Likewise, Natalie from Brooklyn," he smiled, but there was something wistful in his expression. The doors closed before either of them could say more, and Natalie stood there for a moment, touching her feather tattoo, and wondering why she felt like she'd just let something important slip away. She didn't know it yet, but this wasn't the last time she'd see William. In fact, it was just the beginning of a story that would change both their lives forever. But for now, she had a meeting to prepare for, and dreams of blue eyes to push aside until later, when she could write about them in the journal she kept hidden in her bedside drawer. 3 days after the elevator incident, Natalie sat in her firm's main conference room, absently chewing on her pen cap while reviewing project documents. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the polished oak table. Her co-worker, Madison Price, burst through the glass doors, nearly spilling her coffee in excitement. "Have you seen who our new client is?" Madison's green eyes sparkled with barely contained enthusiasm. "The entire office is buzzing." Natalie glanced up from her laptop, raising an eyebrow. "Let me guess, another real estate mogul who thinks concrete blocks are revolutionary." "Better, Thornfield Technologies." Madison perched on the edge of the table, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "And the CEO himself is coming to the meeting." "Thornfield?" The name tickled something in Natalie's memory, but she couldn't place it. She pulled up the client brief on her laptop, scanning the details. The Boston-based tech company, the very same. They're expanding their East Coast operations, and they want us to design their new Manhattan headquarters. Madison's excitement was contagious, but Natalie remained focused on the screen before her. William Thornfield is supposed to be brilliant, Harvard graduate, took over the company at 26 after his father stepped down, and turned it into one of the most innovative tech firms in the country. Natalie's fingers froze over the keyboard. William. Surely it couldn't be. Before she could process the possibility, the conference room began filling with senior partners and project managers, all wearing their most impressive suits and practiced smiles. Natalie smoothed down her blazer, the same one she'd worn during the elevator encounter, and tried to calm her suddenly racing heart. "Everyone, please take your seats." Richard Morrison, the firm's managing partner, announced, "Mr. Thornfield will be joining us momentarily." Natalie pulled out her phone, quickly Googling William Thornfield CEO. Her breath caught as dozens of images loaded, all featuring the same blue eyes and perfectly styled brown hair that had occupied her thoughts for the past 3 days. "Oh God," she whispered, earning a curious look from Madison. The conference room doors opened, and William walked in, followed by 2 executives. He looked even more imposing in the daylight, his authority evident in every measured step. His eyes swept the room professionally until they landed on Natalie. For a split second, his composed expression faltered. "Thank you all for having us." William recovered smoothly, but his hand went to his watch, that same nervous tell Natalie had noticed in the elevator. "We're excited about the possibility of working with your firm on this project." The meeting proceeded with presentations and discussions, but Natalie barely heard any of it. She could feel William's gaze returning to her whenever others were speaking, though he maintained perfect professionalism. Her own attention kept drifting to the memory of sitting beside him on the elevator floor, sharing stories and laughing about their terrible days. "Ms. Ashwood will be leading the design team." Richard's voice cut through her thoughts. Her innovative approach to sustainable architecture aligns perfectly with Thornfield Technologies' vision. Natalie straightened in her chair, forcing herself to focus. This was her career, her chance to prove herself. She couldn't let one unexpected connection, no matter how intense, derail her professional standing. "Ms. Ashwood," William addressed her directly, his tone carefully neutral. "Your portfolio is impressive. I particularly appreciated your work on the Henderson project in Chicago." "Thank you, Mr. Thornfield," Natalie replied, proud that her voice remained steady. "I believe we can create something truly unique for your company's needs." The meeting continued for another hour, with various team members presenting their initial concepts. Throughout it all, the unspoken tension between Natalie and William grew, filling the room with an electricity that thankfully went unnoticed by their colleagues. As the meeting wrapped up, William approached her while others were gathering their things. "Miss Ashwood, do you have a moment to discuss some specific design elements?" Madison shot Natalie an encouraging thumbs up as she left the room, clearly misinterpreting the situation. Soon they were alone in the conference room, the city sprawling beneath them through the windows. "So," Natalie spoke first, crossing her arms. "Technology, huh?" William had the grace to look slightly abashed. "I should have been more specific in the elevator." "You think?" Natalie shook her head, laughing despite herself. "I spent 3 days wondering if I'd ever see you again, and now you're my biggest client ever." "This is complicated," William suggested, taking a step closer. "Natalie, I want you to know that I didn't plan this. When I walked into that elevator, I had no idea who you were. And now I know exactly who you are, and I'd like to know more." He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a business card, offering it to her. "Have dinner with me." Natalie stared at the card, her mind racing. "William, I can't. You're my client. This is my career we're talking about. I understand professional boundaries," he said softly. "But what happened in that elevator wasn't professional. It was real. At least, it felt real to me." The sincerity in his voice made her heart ache. "It felt real to me too," she admitted. "But that doesn't change the situation. I've worked too hard to get where I am. I can't risk people thinking I got this project because of anything other than my abilities." William withdrew the card, nodding slowly. "I respect that, but Natalie..." He waited until she met his gaze. "I'm not giving up that easily. The project is yours because you're the best person for the job. That's a fact. What happens beyond that, well, that's up to you." He turned to leave, pausing at the door. "And by the way, you should know, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you either." After he left, Natalie sank into a chair, her legs suddenly weak. She pulled out her phone, opening the Notes app where she'd been documenting ideas for the project. Instead, she found herself typing, "Day 3, elevator stranger has a name and a company, and the power to completely upend my life." The rest of the day passed in a blur of congratulations from colleagues and project planning meetings. Everyone wanted to discuss the incredible opportunity of working with Thornfield Technologies, but all Natalie could think about was the way William's voice had softened when he said her name. That evening, as she rode the subway home to her Brooklyn apartment, Natalie's phone buzzed with an email notification. The sender, W. Thornfield, a Thornfield Tech com. The subject line read, "Design Inspiration." Her finger hovered over the delete button, but she couldn't bring herself to press it. Instead, she opened the email. "Natalie, since we're keeping things professional, I thought you might be interested in some reference materials for the project. I've attached photos of various tech campuses that have inspired our company culture. On an entirely unrelated note, there's a small jazz club on 7th Avenue that plays the best mix of classic rock and R&B every Thursday night. I hear their mac and cheese is exceptional too. Just thought you might want to know. Professionally yours, William." Natalie read the email 3 times, a smile tugging at her lips despite her best efforts to suppress it. She saved the email to a folder marked Thornfield Project and tried not to think about how her grandmother would say that sometimes the best things in life come disguised as complications. As the subway rattled through the darkness toward home, Natalie touched her feather tattoo and wondered if freedom sometimes meant having the courage to risk everything for something that felt impossibly right. Thursday evening found Natalie standing in front of her closet, arguing with herself. Her phone lay on the bed, William's email still open, the implied invitation to the jazz club taunting her. She'd spent 2 days telling herself she wouldn't go, that it would be unprofessional, complicated, potentially disastrous. Yet here she was, wrapped in a towel, staring at her clothes like they held the answer to her dilemma. "This isn't a date," she muttered, pulling out a casual black dress. "I happen to love jazz and mac and cheese. This is just research." Even as she said it, Natalie knew she was lying to herself. She'd stayed late at the office every night this week, immersing herself in the Thornfield Project, trying to ignore the way her pulse quickened whenever William's name appeared in her inbox. Their email exchanges had remained strictly professional, but each message carried an undercurrent of unspoken possibilities. The jazz club turned out to be an intimate venue, tucked between a vintage bookstore and a coffee shop. String lights crisscrossed the ceiling, casting a warm glow over small round tables and a well-worn wooden stage. The smell of comfort food mingled with the sound of a saxophone warming up. Natalie chose a table near the back, ordering mac and cheese and a glass of wine. She was halfway through her meal when the music started, a soulful blend of jazz standards and contemporary arrangements. She closed her eyes, letting the melody wash over her, almost forgetting why she'd really come. "I was hoping you'd be here." Her eyes snapped open. William stood beside her table, looking different in dark jeans and a navy sweater that made his eyes seem even bluer. Without his usual suit armor, he appeared younger, more approachable. "This isn't a date," Natalie said immediately, then winced at how defensive it sounded. William's mouth curved into a smile as he sat down uninvited. "Of course not. Just 2 people who appreciate good music accidentally being in the same place at the same time. And good mac and cheese," Natalie added, pushing her half-finished plate toward him. "Try it." He took a bite, his eyes widening. "This might be better than my chef's version." "You have a personal chef?" Natalie shouldn't have been surprised, but the reminder of their different worlds stung slightly. "Had," William corrected, pushing the plate back to her. "I let him go last year. Turns out cooking is one of the few things that helps me relax after long days at the office. Though I mostly survive on takeout." The band transitioned into a slow arrangement of an old rock ballad, merged with an R&B classic. William's fingers tapped along with the rhythm on the table. "They're good, aren't they? I found this place by accident one night, when I needed to escape my own thoughts." "Do you come here often?" Natalie asked, genuinely curious. "When I can, which isn't as often as I'd like." He paused, studying her face in the dim light. You never told me why you became an architect." "You never told me why you became a CEO," she countered. "Touché." William leaned back, his expression growing thoughtful. "It wasn't exactly a choice. My father built the company from nothing, had it all planned out. Harvard Business School, grooming me to take over, the whole dynasty thing. When he got sick, stepping up felt like the only option." "Do you regret it?" "Sometimes," he admitted quietly. "But I'm good at it, and the work we do matters. We're developing technologies that could really help people. It's just..." He trailed off, adjusting his watch. "Lonely at the top," Natalie suggested gently. "Something like that." His eyes met hers. "What about you? Why architecture?" Natalie took a sip of wine, gathering her thoughts. "I grew up in a neighborhood where most buildings were just boxes, utilitarian, soulless. But there was this one building on my walk to school, an old library with these beautiful Art Deco details. It made me feel something every time I saw it. I wanted to create spaces that could do that for other people." "Is that what you're doing now?" The question hit close to home. "Sometimes, when clients actually listen to my ideas instead of just wanting another glass tower." "Is that what you think I want?" William's voice was soft but intense, another monument to corporate success. "I don't know what you want, William," Natalie replied, the words carrying more weight than just their professional relationship. The music shifted again, this time to a hauntingly beautiful jazz standard. William stood suddenly, offering his hand. "Dance with me." "There's no dance floor," Natalie protested weakly. "Since when has that ever stopped anyone?" Maybe it was the wine or the music or the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the room, but Natalie found herself taking his hand. They moved to a small space near the stage, where a few other couples were swaying to the music. William's hand was warm on her waist, her fingers intertwined with his. They moved together as if they'd done this 100 times before, finding a rhythm that felt natural, inevitable. "This still isn't a date," Natalie murmured, even as she let herself move closer. "Noted," William replied, his thumb tracing small circles on her back. "Though I should warn you, if it were a date, this would be the moment I'd tell you how beautiful you look tonight." Natalie's heart skipped. "And if it were a date, I might tell you that you clean up pretty well yourself. I'd probably mention that I haven't felt this comfortable with someone in years. And I'd probably admit that you're nothing like what I expected a CEO to be." The song ended, but they didn't immediately step apart. In the dim light, with the next song beginning to play, the air between them felt charged with possibility. "Natalie," William started, his voice rough with emotion. Her phone buzzed loudly in her purse, breaking the moment. It was a text from Madison about an early morning meeting with the project team. Reality crashed back in. "I should go," Natalie said, stepping back. "Early day tomorrow." William nodded, understanding but clearly disappointed. "Let me call you a car. I can take the subway. Please." He touched her arm gently. "It would make me feel better." Natalie hesitated, then nodded. Outside, the autumn air was crisp, carrying the promise of winter. While they waited for the car, William shrugged off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders despite her protests. "Thank you for the non-date," he said as the car arrived, "and for giving the mac and cheese a chance." Natalie slipped off his jacket, handing it back with a smile. "Thank you for the accidental company. And the dance." In the back of the luxury car, watching the city lights blur past, Natalie pulled out her journal. She wrote, "Day 5, danced with a CEO in a jazz club, didn't want it to end, terrified of what that means." Back in her apartment, she kicked off her shoes and walked to the window, looking out at the Brooklyn skyline. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "If this had been a date, I would tell you that you've made it impossible for me to listen to jazz without thinking of you. W." Natalie saved the number, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Finally, she typed, "If this had been a date, I'd tell you that you make me want to break all my rules, but it wasn't a date, so I won't." His reply came seconds later. "Noted. Sweet dreams. Natalie from Brooklyn." She fell asleep with a smile on her face, dreaming of blue eyes and jazz music, trying not to think about how quickly her carefully constructed walls were crumbling. Monday morning's project meeting felt different. Natalie sat at her usual place in the conference room, trying to focus on her presentation slides while being acutely aware of William's presence at the other end of the table. He wore a light grey suit today, his professional mask firmly in place, but his fingers kept straying to his watch whenever their eyes met. "These preliminary designs are impressive, Ms. Ashwood," Richard Morrison commented, flipping through the proposal, "particularly the integration of sustainable technologies. Mr. Thornfield, what are your thoughts?" William leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. "The overall concept is exactly what we're looking for, but I have some concerns about the Eastern Wing's layout." Natalie's heart sank. She'd spent countless hours on that section, pushing boundaries with innovative design elements. "What specific concerns, Mr. Thornfield?" "The open floor plan might not provide enough privacy for our research and development teams." His voice was purely professional, but his eyes held an apology. "We need to ensure absolute confidentiality in certain areas." "I can revise the design," Natalie replied, keeping her tone even. "Though I believe the current layout actually enhances security through strategic placement of access points and—" "Perhaps we should discuss this in detail after the meeting," William interrupted gently. "I have some specific requirements that weren't included in the initial brief." Madison shot Natalie a sympathetic look across the table. Everyone knew how much she hated having her designs questioned, especially in front of the entire team. The meeting continued, but Natalie barely heard the rest of the discussions. Her mind raced with alternatives, improvements, ways to prove her concept could work. When they finally broke for lunch, she gathered her materials quickly, hoping to escape to her office. "Ms. Ashwood?" William's voice stopped her at the door. "Do you have time to review those modifications now?" She turned, finding him much closer than expected. The faint scent of his cologne brought back vivid memories of dancing at the jazz club. "Of course, Mr. Thornfield. My office or the conference room?" "Conference room," he decided, glancing at the curious faces of her colleagues. More space for the blueprints. Once alone in the conference room, William's professional demeanor softened slightly. "And I'm sorry about that. I should have brought up my concerns privately first." "It's fine," Natalie said stiffly, spreading the blueprints across the table. "You're the client. Your requirements come first." "Natalie?" The way he said her name made her pause. "Look at me, please." She did, reluctantly. His blue eyes were troubled, his hand absently adjusting his watch. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," he sighed. "The lines are already blurring. When I look at these designs, I'm not just seeing them as a CEO, I'm seeing them through the lens of someone who—" He trailed off, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "Someone who—" "What?" Natalie challenged softly. "Someone who can't stop thinking about the brilliant architect who created them. Someone who wants to support your vision, not challenge it. But I have responsibilities to my company, to my team." Natalie's anger deflated slightly. "I understand that, but my design is solid, William. The security concerns are valid, but I can show you how the layout actually enhances them, rather than compromising them." She began explaining the intricate details of her design, pointing out security features and innovative solutions. William listened intently, asking thoughtful questions that showed he truly wanted to understand her vision. "See this section here?" She leaned across the table, pointing to a particular detail. "The curved walls aren't just aesthetic, they create natural sound barriers and—" She broke off as William's hand covered hers on the blueprint. The touch sent electricity through her skin. "I trust your expertise," he said quietly. "And you're right. The design is brilliant. I just needed to understand it better." His thumb traced small circles on her wrist, just below her feather tattoo. "You're brilliant." Natalie pulled her hand away reluctantly. "William, we can't. Not here." "I know." He stepped back, straightening his tie. "But maybe we could discuss the rest of the modifications over dinner. Strictly professional, of course." "Like the jazz club was strictly professional." She raised an eyebrow. "That wasn't professional at all," he admitted with a slight smile. "But this would be different. Public restaurant, business attire, detailed discussion of architectural specifications, and no dancing." "No dancing," he promised, though his eyes sparkled. "Unless you count the careful choreography of maintaining appropriate boundaries." Natalie knew she should say no, but the thought of spending another evening with him, even under the guise of work— "Fine, but I choose the restaurant, somewhere normal, not one of your usual five-star establishments." "Deal." William's smile widened. "Though I should warn you, I've been exploring Brooklyn's restaurant scene lately, developing a taste for places that feel real." Before Natalie could respond, Madison burst into the conference room. "Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your meeting. But Natalie, the contractors for the Henderson project are on the line. They're having some issues with the foundation specs. I'll let you handle that," William said smoothly, gathering his papers. "Email me the restaurant details, Ms. Ashwood. I look forward to our professional discussion." After he left, Madison turned to Natalie with wide eyes. "Okay, spill. What's going on with you and Mr. Gorgeous CEO?" "Nothing," Natalie said too quickly. "So we're just working through some design modifications." "Uh-huh." Madison crossed her arms. "And that's why he looks at you like you hung the moon." "Come on, Nat. I've never seen him smile like that in any of our other meetings." "It's complicated, Mad." Natalie began gathering her things. "And it needs to stay professional. This project is too important." "Life is complicated," Madison shrugged. "But sometimes the best things are worth the risk. Just be careful, okay? Both with your heart and your career." Alone in her office later that afternoon, Natalie pulled out her journal. Day 8. Trying to keep things professional, failing miserably. "The way he looks at me makes me forget all the reasons this is a bad idea." Her phone buzzed with a text from William. "If you're interested in continuing our strictly professional discussion of curved walls and sound barriers, I found a great Ethiopian place in Fort Greene. Their coffee ceremony might change your life." Natalie smiled despite herself. "Trying to impress me with your Brooklyn knowledge, Mr. Thornfield." His reply came quickly. "Is it working?" She thought about her grandmother's words about freedom and belonging, about the way William's touch made her feel both grounded and weightless. Maybe, but this is still just a business dinner. "Of course. Though I should mention they play jazz on Tuesday nights." Natalie laughed, shaking her head as she typed, "No dancing, remember?" "No dancing," he agreed, "but I can't promise I won't think about it." Later, as she reviewed the revised blueprints, Natalie realized she was humming the jazz standard they'd danced to at the club. The lines between professional and personal were definitely blurring, and she wasn't sure she wanted to stop it anymore. The Ethiopian restaurant was exactly as William had described, warm, inviting, and utterly unpretentious. Nestled in a historic brownstone, its walls were adorned with traditional artwork, and the aroma of spices and freshly roasted coffee filled the air. Natalie arrived first, wearing a simple burgundy dress that she told herself was chosen for comfort rather than the way it highlighted her amber eyes. She was examining the menu when William walked in, looking slightly disheveled. His tie was loosened, and his usually perfect hair showed signs of frustrated fingers running through it. Something was wrong. "I'm sorry I'm late," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. Board meeting ran long. "Everything okay?" Natalie asked, noting the tension in his shoulders. William attempted a smile that didn't reach his eyes, just the usual corporate politics. "Some board members aren't happy with the direction I'm taking the company. They think our focus on sustainable technology isn't profitable enough. And what do you think? I think they're stuck in the past." His hand went to his watch, adjusting it absently. "My father built this company on innovation, but some of these men knew him when I was still in diapers. They see me as the kid who used to run through the offices on summer breaks." A server approached with traditional hand-washing ceremony materials, momentarily pausing their conversation. As they participated in the ritual, Natalie watched William's posture gradually relax. "You know," she said, drying her hands, "I had a professor in college who said that architecture isn't about buildings. It's about the spaces between them, the way people move, interact, live. Maybe technology is the same way. It's not about the profits, but about how it changes people's lives." William looked at her with something like wonder. "How do you do that?" "Do what?" "Cut right through all the noise to the heart of things." He leaned forward, his earlier frustration forgotten. "That's exactly what I've been trying to explain to the board. Our new sustainable tech division might not show immediate profits, but it could revolutionize how cities manage resources." Their food arrived, a large platter of various dishes served on injera bread. William watched in amusement as Natalie expertly tore off a piece of bread and scooped up some spicy lentils. "You've been here before," he observed. "My best friend in college was Ethiopian. Her mum used to cook for us during finals week." Natalie demonstrated the proper technique. "Here, try it like this." William mimicked her movements, their fingers brushing as she adjusted his grip on the bread. The simple touch sent sparks through her skin. "This is incredible," he said after tasting several dishes. "So as though I have to admit, I might need help identifying what I'm eating. The red one is Berber spiced chicken, that's collard greens with garlic, and the yellow one, Ms. Ashwood." They both looked up to find Robert Walsh, one of the senior partners from Natalie's firm, standing at their table with his wife. "Mr. Walsh," Natalie straightened, suddenly very aware of how intimate their dinner looked. "Well, what a surprise." "Indeed." Walsh's eyes moved between them, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Thornfield, I hadn't realized you and Ms. Ashwood were discussing the project outside office hours." "Mr. Walsh," William stood, smoothly shifting into CEO mode. "We were just reviewing some design modifications over dinner. Your firm's dedication to client satisfaction is impressive." Walsh's wife smiled warmly. "How wonderful to see young professionals so devoted to their work, though you really should try the coffee ceremony here. It's quite romantic." Natalie felt her cheeks burn as Walsh's eyebrows rose slightly. "We should let you enjoy your dinner," he said carefully. "See you tomorrow, Mrs. Ashwood." After they left, an uncomfortable silence fell over the table. "That's going to be office gossip by morning," Natalie sighed. "I'm sorry," William said softly. "I should have thought about the possibility of running into someone you work with. It's not your fault. I chose this place, remember?" She pushed her food around, absently. I've worked so hard to be taken seriously. People already whisper about how I got the Thornfield project." "What do you mean?" "Oh, come on, William. Young black female architect gets the biggest project of the year. People talk." "And now," she gestured at the intimate table setting. William's expression darkened. "You got this project because you're brilliant. Anyone who suggests otherwise, doesn't matter what's true," Natalie cut him off. "Perception is reality in this business. You of all people should understand that." He was quiet for a moment, then reached across the table to touch her hand. "What if I don't want to understand it? What if I'm tired of living by everyone else's rules?" "William, no, listen." His blue eyes were intense. "I've spent my entire life trying to live up to expectations, my father's, the board's, society's. But when I'm with you, I feel like myself for the first time in years. Not the CEO, not the Thornfield heir, just me. Natalie felt tears prick at her eyes. That's not fair. You can't say things like that and expect me to stay professional. Then maybe we should stop pretending this is just a business dinner. He squeezed her hand gently. Come home with me tonight. The invitation hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility. For a moment, Natalie was tempted, so tempted, to say yes. I can't, she whispered finally. Not like this. Not with Walsh's assumptions already spreading through the office. I need time. William nodded, though she could see the disappointment in his eyes. I understand. For what it's worth, I'd wait forever, if that's what you needed. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of meaningful glances and careful conversation. When the check came, they both reached for it. Let me, William insisted. It's a business expense, remember? Right. Natalie smiled sadly. Business. Outside, the autumn night had turned chilly. William shrugged off his suit jacket, draping it over her shoulders before she could protest. The gesture felt painfully intimate. Let me call you a car, he offered. No. Natalie needed to clear her head. I think I'll walk for a bit. The subway's not far. Natalie. William caught her arm gently. I meant what I said. About waiting. About all of it. She looked up at him, memorizing the way the streetlights caught the grey flecks in his blue eyes. Then, before she could talk herself out of it, she rose on her tiptoes and pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. Good night, William, she whispered, slipping off his jacket and handing it back. She was halfway down the block when his voice called after her. This wasn't just business. Natalie didn't turn around, but she was smiling as she wrote in her journal later that night. Day 12. He offered me everything I want. So why am I running away? Maybe because for the first time in my life, I'm more afraid of saying yes than no. Her phone buzzed with a text. Your professor was right about spaces between things. The space between us right now feels infinite. W. She replied before she could stop herself. Some spaces are meant to be crossed, just not tonight. His response made her heart skip. I'll wait for the right night. Sweet dreams. Natalie from Brooklyn. As she fell asleep, Natalie touched her feather tattoo and wondered if her grandmother had been right about another thing too, that sometimes the scariest leaps lead to the most beautiful landings. The whispers started the moment Natalie walked into the office Wednesday morning. She caught fragments of conversations that died as she passed, saw the way heads bent together over coffee cups in the break room. Madison intercepted her before she could reach her office. Nat, we need to talk. Madison's usually cheerful face was worried. Walsh told Richardson about seeing you with Thornfield last night. Natalie's stomach dropped. Richardson was the firm's most conservative partner, known for his rigid views on professional conduct. It was a business dinner. Mad. Nothing more. You know that's not how Richardson sees things. Madison glanced around before lowering her voice. He's calling a partner meeting this afternoon. There's talk about reassigning the Thornfield project. They can't do that, Natalie protested, but her voice lacked conviction. The designs are mine. The concept, the innovation. The concept that our biggest client specifically requested modifications for. Madison's green eyes were sympathetic. Honey, they're saying you're too emotionally involved. The words hit like a physical blow. Natalie retreated to her office, closing the door before her composure could crack. Her phone buzzed. A text from William. Missing your insight this morning. The board meeting would be much more interesting if you were here to cut through the noise. She stared at the message, her vision blurring with unshed tears. Everything she'd worked for was unraveling, because she'd dared to feel something real. Her computer pinged with a calendar invite, project review meeting, 2 p.m., senior partners only. Natalie's hands shook as she opened her design files. She'd poured her heart into this project, pushing boundaries, creating something truly innovative. The thought of someone else taking over, of losing this opportunity because of assumptions and office politics, made her feel physically ill. A knock at her door made her quickly wipe her eyes. Come in. Richard Morrison entered, his expression grave. Ms. Ashwood, do you have a moment? Of course. Natalie gestured to the chair across from her desk, forcing her voice to remain steady. I'll be direct, Morrison said, settling into the chair. Your relationship with Mr. Thornfield has become a concern. There is no relationship, Natalie insisted. We had dinner to discuss design modifications. It was purely professional. Morrison's kind face tightened slightly. Natalie, I've known you since you were an intern. You're one of our most promising architects, but this situation, it doesn't look good. Walsh said the dinner seemed quite intimate. So my career is threatened because of how something looked. Anger began to replace her fear. What about my work, my designs, the innovations I've brought to this project? Your work is exceptional, Morrison acknowledged, but we have to consider the firm's reputation. Mr. Thornfield is our biggest client, and I'm just a disposable asset. The words tasted bitter. Morrison sighed heavily. No one's saying that, but perhaps some distance would be beneficial. We're considering having Lucas take the lead on the project. Lucas? Natalie couldn't hold back a harsh laugh. The same Lucas who hasn't had an original design idea in 5 years, who still thinks sustainable architecture is a passing trend. He has experience managing high-profile clients. You mean he's a middle-aged white man who plays golf with other middle-aged white men? Natalie stood, her chair rolling back. This is ridiculous. I earned this project. My work speaks for itself. Natalie, no. She held up a hand. I need some air. Excuse me. She grabbed her coat and bag, ignoring the stares as she strode through the office. In the elevator, the same one where she'd first met William, she finally let the tears fall. Her phone buzzed again. Just got out of the board meeting. Could use a friendly face and some of that Brooklyn wisdom. Lunch. Instead of replying, Natalie hit the call button. Natalie! William answered immediately, concern evident in his voice. What's wrong? Everything. Her voice cracked. They're taking the project away from me. Because of last night, because of you, because... She broke off, struggling to breathe. Where are you? Outside the office. I couldn't stay there, couldn't listen to them talk about professional conduct and reputational risk, like I'm some kind of... Stay there, William interrupted firmly. I'm 10 minutes away. William, no, that will only make things worse. I don't care. His voice softened. Please, just wait for me. 9 minutes later, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. William emerged, ignoring the curious glances from people entering the building. Without hesitation, he pulled Natalie into his arms. I'm so sorry, he murmured into her hair. This is all my fault. Natalie allowed herself one moment to sink into his embrace, to breathe in the familiar scent of his cologne before stepping back. No, it's my fault. I knew better. I knew the risks. Get in the car, William said suddenly. What? Get in the car. We're going somewhere to talk properly, away from prying eyes. Common sense told her to refuse, to go back upstairs and fight for her project, to maintain what was left of her professional image. Instead, she found herself sliding into the luxurious back seat. William directed his driver to a small park overlooking the East River. The autumn air was crisp, the park nearly empty at this hour. They walked in silence until they found a secluded bench. I'll talk to Morrison, William said finally. I'll explain that the dinner was my idea, that you've been nothing but professional. Don't. Natalie's voice was tired. That will only confirm their suspicions. Besides, they're not entirely wrong, are they? There is something between us. Something that scares me because it feels bigger than my career, bigger than your company, bigger than all the reasons we shouldn't. William took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. Then let it be bigger. Natalie, Don't say it. She pulled her hand away. Please. I can't hear that right now. Not when everything I've worked for is falling apart. They sat in silence, watching the river flow past. Finally, William spoke softly. What do you need from me? Natalie touched her feather tattoo, a habit that had become more frequent lately. I need space. Time to figure out how to save my career without sacrificing my integrity, and you need to let me do it my way, even if that means staying away from you. Especially then. She turned to face him, memorizing the way the sunlight caught his eyes. William, what I feel for you, it's real, too real. But I can't be the woman who sacrificed everything she believed in for a man, no matter how extraordinary that man might be. William nodded slowly, though she could see the pain in his expression. I understand. But, Natalie, he waited until she met his gaze. When you're done figuring things out, when you've proven to everyone that you're exactly as brilliant as I know you are, I'll still be here. She stood, fighting the urge to kiss him, to throw caution to the wind. Goodbye, William. For now, he called after her as she walked away. Just for now. That night, Natalie sat on her fire escape, journal open in her lap. Day 13. Sometimes the hardest part of falling in love is choosing not to, at least not yet, not until I prove to myself and everyone else that I'm more than just a woman who caught a CEO's eye. I'm an architect with a vision, and tomorrow I'm going to fight for it. Her phone lit up with one last message from William. For what it's worth, you're the most remarkable person I've ever met. Take all the space you need. I'll be here, adjusting my watch and thinking of you. Natalie smiled through her tears, typing back, take care of yourself. William from Boston. Some spaces are meant to be temporary. 2 weeks of radio silence felt like an eternity. Natalie threw herself into work with renewed determination, arriving early and staying late, refining every detail of her designs until they were flawless. Her office became a fortress of blueprints and 3D models, each one a testament to her vision and expertise. The morning of the full project presentation arrived with a mix of anticipation and dread. Natalie stood before her mirror, carefully selecting her armor, a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, subtle gold earrings that had belonged to her grandmother, and a confidence she hoped looked more genuine than it felt. You've got this, Madison said, intercepting her with coffee before the meeting. Those revisions you made, they're incredible. They better be. Natalie took a grateful sip. I haven't slept more than 4 hours a night for the past 2 weeks. Have you heard from him? Natalie's hand instinctively went to her phone, where William's last message remained unanswered. Missing your Brooklyn wisdom in today's strategy meeting. Hope you're well. No, she lied, straightening her jacket. And that's for the best. The conference room was already full when she arrived. Lucas sat in her usual spot, smirking slightly. She chose a seat at the opposite end of the table, spreading out her materials with deliberate precision. When William walked in with his executive team, she forced herself to focus on her presentation notes, but she couldn't help noticing how tired he looked, the shadows under his eyes matching her own. His hand went to his watch, once, twice, before he took his seat. Thank you all for joining us today, Richard Morrison began. As you know, we've made some adjustments to the project team. Lucas will be taking the lead. Actually, Natalie stood, her heart pounding but her voice steady. Before we proceed, I'd like to present something. The room fell silent. Morrison frowned. Ms. Ashwood, we discussed this. Yes, we did. And now I'm asking for 10 minutes to show you why those discussions were premature. She met William's eyes briefly, drawing strength from the warmth she found there. Mr. Thornfield, would you allow me to present my revised designs? William's professional mask remained perfect, but she caught the slight quirk of his lips. The floor is yours, Miss Ashwood. Natalie launched into her presentation, her passion evident in every word. She'd spent countless sleepless nights reimagining the Eastern Wing, creating a revolutionary security system that maintained the open aesthetic while ensuring absolute privacy. The sustainable technologies were seamlessly integrated, promising significant cost savings that would silence even the most profit-focused board members. But the real innovation, she continued, pulling up her final renderings, is how the design adapts to future needs. The modular structure allows for expansion without compromising the original aesthetic or function. This isn't just a headquarters, it's a legacy. She finished her presentation to complete silence. Then William stood, walking slowly around the table to examine the 3D model more closely. The security features, he said quietly, they're unlike anything I've seen before. Because I created them specifically for your needs, Natalie replied, keeping her voice professional despite his proximity. I studied every aspect of your company's operations, every potential security concern. This design doesn't just meet your requirements, it exceeds them. William turned to his executive team. Thoughts? His head of security nodded approvingly. The integration of biometric systems with the architectural elements is brilliant. It's secure without feeling like a fortress. And the sustainability features, William prompted. His environmental advisor leaned forward eagerly. The projected energy savings alone would justify the initial investment. This could become a model for corporate sustainability. William finally turned back to Natalie, his expression unreadable. How long did this revision take you? 2 weeks, she answered honestly. I wanted to prove that your vision for the company and mine for the design weren't just compatible. They were meant for each other. The double meaning of her words hung in the air between them. William held her gaze for a moment longer than strictly professional, then addressed the room. Mr. Morrison, I hope you'll forgive my directness, but any changes to the project team would be unacceptable. He returned to his seat, adjusting his watch one final time. Ms. Ashwood's vision aligns perfectly with Thornfield Technologies' goals. She stays, or we'll need to reconsider our choice of architectural firm entirely. Lucas's face reddened. Mr. Thornfield, surely. That won't be necessary, Morrison interrupted quickly. Ms. Ashwood will remain project lead with the full support of the firm. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur of congratulations and project timelines. Natalie maintained her professional composure, but inside, she was soaring. She'd done it, proven her worth on merit alone. As the room cleared, William lingered, ostensibly reviewing some documents. When they were finally alone, he spoke softly. I knew you could do it. Natalie looked up from gathering her materials. I didn't do it for you. I know. His smile was gentle. You did it for yourself. That's what makes you extraordinary. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, see the fatigue etched around his eyes. I've missed you. Natalie from Brooklyn. William. She gripped the edge of the table. We can't. Or won't. He reached out, his fingers brushing her feather tattoo. Because I've spent 2 weeks in meetings with people who see nothing but profit margins and quarterly reports, and all I could think about was how you'd cut through their noise to the heart of what matters. Natalie's breath caught. That's not fair. None of this is fair. His voice was rough with emotion. It's not fair that you had to work twice as hard to prove what I already knew. It's not fair that we have to pretend there's nothing between us when everything in me wants to. The conference room door opened, and they jumped apart. Madison stuck her head in. Nat, sorry to interrupt, but the contractors are on line 1. It's urgent. I'll be right there. Natalie gathered her things quickly, not trusting herself to look at William again. Ms. Ashwood, his voice was back to its professional tone. Excellent work today. I look forward to our continued collaboration. That evening, Natalie sat in her favorite coffee shop, her journal open before her. Day 27. I proved myself today, proved that I'm more than office gossip or assumptions. So why does victory feel incomplete? Why do I keep thinking about the way his fingers felt on my wrist, the shadows under his eyes, the words he almost said? Her phone buzzed with a text from William. Congratulations again on the presentation. Your grandmother would be proud. She smiled, remembering how she'd mentioned her grandmother's earrings during their dinner weeks ago. Thank you for everything. Don't thank me. You did this on your own. A pause, then another message. Though I have to admit, these past 2 weeks have made me question everything I thought I knew about space and time. Natalie's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Finally, she typed, Some spaces are necessary, even when they hurt. His reply made her heart ache. And some hurts are worth it. When you're ready, I'll still be adjusting my watch and thinking of curved walls and sound barriers. She closed her journal, gathered her things, and walked home through the Brooklyn streets she loved. The autumn wind carried the promise of change, and for the first time in weeks, she felt truly free, not because she'd pushed William away, but because she'd proven to herself that she could stand on her own. Tomorrow, she'd face new challenges, new designs, new moments of having to maintain professional distance when all she wanted was to close the space between them. But tonight, she'd achieved something remarkable, and that was enough. Or at least, she tried to convince herself it was. December arrived with bitter winds and unexpected complications. The groundbreaking ceremony for Thornfield Technologies, new headquarters, was scheduled for the end of the month, and the pressure to finalize every detail had turned the office into a pressure cooker of stress and late nights. Natalie stood at her office window, watching snow swirl against the darkening sky. It was past 8, and she'd just finished another marathon meeting with the construction team. Her phone buzzed with a text from Madison. Girl, go home. The building plans will still be there tomorrow. But home felt empty lately, at least here. Surrounded by her designs and dreams, she could pretend that professional satisfaction was enough to fill the William-shaped void in her life. Their interactions over the past month had been perfectly cordial, strictly professional, and absolutely torturous. Every project meeting felt like an elaborate dance of avoiding eye contact while being hyper-aware of each other's presence. William had respected her boundaries, kept his distance, but she caught him watching her sometimes with an intensity that made her breath catch. A knock at her door startled her from her thoughts. Come in. Still burning the midnight oil? Natalie's heart stumbled at William's voice. He stood in her doorway, his coat dusted with snow, looking devastatingly handsome and somehow vulnerable. What are you doing here? She forced her voice to remain steady. Board meeting ran late. He stepped inside, closing the door. I saw your light on. Thought maybe we could talk about the project, about us. Natalie turned back to the window, wrapping her arms around herself. William, we've been through this. Have we? He moved closer, his reflection appearing beside hers in the glass. "Because I've spent the past month watching you prove to everyone how extraordinary you are, while pretending I don't feel like I'm drowning without you." "Don't," her voice cracked. "Please. Why not? You've proven yourself. The board loves your designs. Morrison practically worships the ground you walk on since you saved the contract. What are we waiting for? It's not that simple, isn't it?" William's hand touched her shoulder gently, turning her to face him. "Because I think it is. I think we're both tired of pretending that what we feel isn't worth fighting for." Natalie looked up into his blue eyes, seeing the same exhaustion and longing she felt reflected there. "The groundbreaking ceremony is in 3 weeks. And you know what I realized today, sitting in that board meeting?" His thumb traced her cheek. "I don't want to stand in front of all those people and pretend that the most remarkable thing about this project is the building design." "What do you mean?" "I mean that watching you these past months, your passion, your integrity, your brilliant mind has changed everything. The company, yes, but more importantly, me." He touched his watch absently. "My father used to say that true innovation comes from having the courage to reimagine what's possible." I think he was right, but not just about technology. Natalie's heart raced. "William," the office phone rang shrilly, making them both jump. Natalie reached for it automatically. "Don't," William caught her hand. "Just listen to me, please." She let her hand drop, nodding silently. "I've spent my entire life trying to live up to expectations. My father's legacy, the board's demands, society's rules. But you," he smiled softly, "you crashed into my perfectly ordered world in that elevator and showed me that real legacy isn't about buildings or profit margins. It's about having the courage to be authentic." "I'm scared," Natalie admitted quietly. "Not of you, but of us. Of how much I feel when I'm with you. Of losing myself in this." "You could never lose yourself." William's fingers found her feather tattoo. "You're too strong, too sure of who you are. That's what makes me love you." The words hung in the air between them, both a confession and a question. "Say that again," Natalie whispered. "I love you." William's voice was sure, steady. "I love your brilliant mind and your fierce heart. I love how you gesture when you're excited about a design, how you bite your pen when you're concentrating, how you make me want to be worthy of the way you see the world." Tears slipped down Natalie's cheeks. "I've been trying so hard not to love you. How's that working out?" She laughed wetly. "Terribly. I see you in everything, in the curves of my designs, in the way the sun hits the buildings, in every jazz song that plays on my way to work." William pulled her closer, resting his forehead against hers. "Then stop fighting it. Be with me, Natalie from Brooklyn. Let me love you properly, openly, without hiding behind project meetings and professional distance." "What about the ceremony? The press? Let them talk. I want them to know that the most innovative thing about Thornfield Technologies isn't our sustainable design or our security systems. It's that we're brave enough to reimagine what's possible in business and in life." Natalie reached up, touching his face gently. "Yeah, your board won't like it. My board works for me, not the other way around. And any of them who have a problem with me loving a brilliant, beautiful architect who's revolutionizing our company can find another job." The phone rang again, but neither of them moved to answer it. Instead, Natalie rose on her tiptoes and kissed him, softly at first, then with all the pent-up passion of months of denial. William's arms wrapped around her, pulling her closer as if he could erase every inch of space that had ever existed between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, William smiled. "I've been wanting to do that since the elevator." "Me too." Natalie touched her lips, still tingling. "Though I have to warn you, my life is complicated. I'm stubborn. I work too much. And I'll never be the kind of person who fits easily into your world." "Good." William kissed her again briefly. "Because my world needs shaking up, and you're exactly the earthquake I've been waiting for." Later that night, curled up on her fire escape with her journal, Natalie wrote, "Day 58. I stopped fighting gravity today. Turns out some forces are inevitable, like the way planets orbit the sun, or the way my heart recognizes his voice before my ears do. I'm still me, still ambitious, still determined to change the world through my designs, but now I have someone who sees all of me and loves me, not despite my complications, but because of them." Her phone buzzed with a text from William. "Missing you already. Though I should warn you, I just told my PR team to prepare for some interesting headlines after the groundbreaking ceremony." Natalie smiled, typing back, "Worried about the press. Only about how to keep my professional face, when all I want to do is tell everyone that the architect who designed our future is also the woman who redesigned my heart." She laughed, touching her feather tattoo. "That was incredibly cheesy, Mr. Thornfield." "Get used to it, Miss Ashwood. I've been holding back my terrible metaphors for months." "I love you too," she typed, the words feeling both terrifying and perfectly right. "Even with your terrible metaphors," his response made her heart soar. "Some spaces are meant to be filled with love and bad poetry. Speaking of which, want to get some mac and cheese and help me practice my ceremony speech?" Natalie looked at her city, her dreams, her love, all spreading out before her like an infinite canvas of possibilities. "Only if you promise there will be dancing." "Always," came his reply, "for the rest of our lives, if you'll let me." The news broke faster than either of them expected. 3 days after their kiss in Natalie's office, the business section of the Boston Globe ran the headline, "Thornfield Technologies, CEO's romance with project architect raises questions about $500 million contract." Natalie stared at her phone screen, reading the article for the 10th time while sitting in William's penthouse kitchen. The morning sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the mess they'd made trying to cook breakfast together, their first real morning as a couple. "Stop reading that garbage," William said, sliding a cup of coffee across the marble counter. He'd foregone his usual suit for jeans and a soft sweater, his hair still slightly rumpled from sleep. "The PR team is handling it. They're questioning my credentials, William." Natalie set her phone down with more force than necessary, suggesting I got the contract because we were already involved, which anyone who's seen your work knows is ridiculous. He moved behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "The design speaks for itself." "Does it?" She leaned back against him, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "Because right now, all anyone's talking about is us, not the revolutionary sustainable technology integration or the security innovations." William's lips brushed her temple. "Then we'll make them talk about both. The groundbreaking ceremony is in 2 weeks. We'll show them that our personal relationship and professional excellence aren't mutually exclusive." The intercom buzzed, interrupting their moment. William's security team announced the arrival of his PR director, Catherine Wells. "Ready to face the music?" William asked softly. "As I'll ever be." Catherine swept in, impeccably dressed and radiating efficiency. Her expression softened slightly when she saw them. "You two are adorable, but we need to get ahead of this story." "We're not hiding," William said firmly, keeping one arm around Natalie. "I wouldn't suggest it." Catherine laid out several newspapers on the counter. "But we need to control the narrative. The board is nervous, investors are asking questions, and your competitors are having a field day." Natalie straightened her shoulders. "What do you suggest?" "A joint interview. Let people see you together, understand your story, but more importantly, showcase the project itself, the design innovations, the environmental impact, the job creation. Remind everyone what really matters here." "No," William's voice was firm. "I won't put Natalie through that kind of scrutiny." "Actually," Natalie turned to face him, "I think Catherine's right. I've spent my career letting my work speak for itself. Maybe it's time to speak for my work and for us." William studied her face. "You're sure?" "I'm sure about you." She touched his watch gently. "The rest we'll figure out together." Catherine cleared her throat. "There's something else. The board is calling an emergency meeting this afternoon. They're concerned about optics." "Let them be concerned." William's jaw set stubbornly. "I meant what I said. Anyone who has a problem with this can find another company." "William," Natalie said softly, "you can't risk everything you've built. Watch me." He cupped her face in his hands. "Why, my father built this company on innovation and courage. What better way to honor that than by showing that love and success aren't enemies?" The next week passed in a whirlwind of meetings, interviews, and preparations for the ceremony. Natalie split her time between overseeing final construction details and sitting beside William in various offices, telling their story again and again. So, the elevator just stopped. The reporter from the Wall Street Journal leaned forward, clearly hoping for scandal. "It did," Natalie smiled, her hand finding William's automatically. "But what started as an inconvenience became a moment of genuine connection. We talked about everything: music, dreams, the pressure of expectations, and the professional relationship came later. The project was awarded based on Ashwood's exceptional design proposal," William interjected smoothly. "Our personal relationship developed separately, though I'll admit, seeing her brilliant mind in action only made me fall harder. The article that ran the next day was surprisingly positive, focusing on the innovative design elements while weaving in their love story as a human interest angle. Other publications followed suit, and gradually the narrative began to shift. Still, there were challenges. Natalie overheard whispers at her firm, saw the way some clients looked at her differently. William faced pushback from conservative board members and skeptical investors. One evening, after a particularly grueling board meeting, they sat on Natalie's fire escape, sharing takeout and watching the Brooklyn sunset. "Rogers threatened to resign today," William said, picking at his pad tie. "Said my father would be disappointed in my lack of judgment." Natalie stiffened. "Giant, what did you say?" "I told him my father's greatest gift to me was this watch." He touched the vintage timepiece, and the advice he gave me when he handed it down: "Time is precious, son. Don't waste it living someone else's version of success." And then I accepted his resignation. William set aside his food, pulling her closer. "Saracen, the funny thing is, I've never felt more successful than I do right now sitting here with you." Natalie kissed him softly. "Even with all the drama, especially with the drama, you make me brave." Natalie from Brooklyn, brave enough to build something real, not just with steel and glass dates, but with truth and love. The next morning, Natalie arrived at the construction site early. The foundation was complete, and the first structural elements were being placed. She watched the sunrise paint the skeleton of her design in gold, remembering all the moments that had led to this. Her phone buzzed with a text from William. "Just saw the latest renderings. You've outdone yourself, though I might be biased since I'm in love with the architect." She smiled, typing back, "Careful, Mr. Thornfield. Comments like that might make headlines." "Let them. I'm proud to love a woman who designs buildings that touch the sky and a future that defies expectations." Later that day, in a quiet moment between meetings, Natalie wrote in her journal, "Day 65. The world thinks our love story is about defying convention or challenging the status quo, but really, it's simpler than that. It's about two people who found each other in a stopped elevator and decided that some spaces, between hearts, between dreams, between who we are and who we could be, are meant to be bridged, not maintained." As she closed her journal, her eyes fell on the latest architectural magazine on her desk. The cover showed their building's design, but the headline made her smile. "Innovation in Structure and Spirit. How Love is Reshaping Corporate Architecture." William had been right. They weren't just building a headquarters. They were building a legacy of courage, proving that the most sustainable foundation isn't built with concrete and steel, but with the truth of who you are and the love that makes you brave enough to show it to the world. The morning of the groundbreaking ceremony dawned clear and cold, the December sky a perfect winter blue that reminded Natalie of William's eyes. She stood before the mirror in her Brooklyn apartment, taking in her reflection, a tailored navy suit that spoke of confidence and professionalism, her grandmother's gold earrings catching the light, and her natural curls framing her face in a way that felt both powerful and authentic. "You look perfect," Madison said from the doorway, "though the smile might give away how happy you are." "Is that a bad thing?" Natalie adjusted her jacket, touching her feather tattoo for luck. "Are you kidding? After the month you've had, own it, girl. You designed a revolutionary building and got the guy. That's what I call a power move." Natalie's phone buzzed with a text from William. "Meeting got moved up. Won't be able to pick you up. But I left something for you downstairs." Curious, she headed down to find William's driver holding a small package wrapped in silver paper. Inside was a delicate gold necklace with a perfect feather pendant and a note, "For the woman who taught me that freedom isn't about flying away, it's about knowing where you belong. See you at our future. W." The construction site had been transformed for the ceremony. A large tent protected rows of chairs from the winter chill, while heaters created pockets of warmth throughout the space. Press cameras lined the back, and Natalie spotted familiar faces from both her firm and Thornfield Technologies filling the seats. William stood near the podium, deep in conversation with board members. He looked devastating in a charcoal suit, but it was the way his face lit up when he saw her that made her heart skip. She touched the feather pendant at her throat, remembering their journey from that first elevator ride to this moment. "Ready?" he asked softly as she joined him. "Together," she whispered back. His hand found hers, squeezing gently. "Always." The ceremony began with speeches from city officials and board members. Natalie listened with half an ear, her mind on the journey that had brought them here. When William took the podium, however, she focused completely. My father used to say that true innovation requires more than technology. It requires courage, William began, his voice strong and clear. When we began this project, I thought I knew what that meant. I thought it was about pushing boundaries in sustainable design, about creating something that would reshape the corporate landscape. He paused, his hand going to his watch briefly before continuing. But then I met someone who showed me that real innovation isn't just about buildings or technology. It's about having the courage to reimagine what's possible in every aspect of life. His eyes found Natalie's in the crowd. The headquarters we're breaking ground for today isn't just a testament to architectural brilliance or technological advancement. It's proof that when we're brave enough to break from convention, in business, in design, in love, we create something truly revolutionary. The speech continued, but Natalie barely heard the rest. Her heart was too full, remembering all the moments that had led here. Their first conversation in a stopped elevator, jazz music and forbidden dances, professional battles and personal victories. When it was her turn to speak, Natalie approached the podium with quiet confidence. Architecture isn't just about creating buildings, she began. It's about creating spaces where life happens, where dreams take shape, where connections form. This design represents more than sustainable innovation or security integration. It represents the possibility that exists when we stop maintaining spaces between what we want and what we dare to reach for. The ceremony culminated in the traditional groundbreaking photo op. As William and Natalie stood together, gold shovels in hand, cameras flashing, he leaned close to whisper, "Dance with me." "What? Here? Why not?" "We've never been conventional." Before she could protest, he pulled her into a gentle spin, right there in front of the press and their colleagues and the whole world. Someone started playing music, their jazz song, the one from that first night at the club, and suddenly they were dancing on the site of their future, laughing as snowflakes began to fall. The photos that ran in the papers the next day didn't focus on controversy or questions of propriety. They showed a couple dancing in the snow, joy radiating from their faces, while behind them rose the beginnings of something revolutionary. Later that evening, they sat in William's penthouse, shoes kicked off, sharing takeout Chinese food and watching the city lights twinkle below. "I have something for you," William said, reaching into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box. Natalie's breath caught. "William, it's not what you think." He opened the box to reveal a key. "Though that question is definitely in our future, this is a key to a brownstone in Brooklyn. I thought maybe we could make it our home. A perfect blend of your world and mine." Tears filled Natalie's eyes as she took the key. "You'd leave your penthouse? Move to Brooklyn?" "I'd go anywhere with you." He touched the feather pendant at her throat. "But Brooklyn feels right. It's where your dreams began, where you first learned to see beauty in buildings. Maybe it's where we build our next chapter." Natalie set aside her food and climbed into his lap, kissing him deeply. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "Even when you're being ridiculously romantic." "Especially then," he smiled. "Though I should warn you, the brownstone needs some renovation. I thought maybe a brilliant architect might have some ideas. Are you hiring me, Mr. Thornfield? I'm choosing you, Miss Ashwood, for every project, every dance, every moment to come." That night, Natalie wrote one last entry in her journal, Day 82. "Today we broke ground on more than a building. We broke ground on a future where love doesn't compete with ambition, where authenticity isn't sacrificed for success, where the spaces between dreams are filled with possibility instead of fear. Tomorrow, we'll face new challenges, design new dreams, dance to new songs. But tonight, in this moment, we're exactly where we belong." Her phone buzzed with a text from William. "Just realized something." "Remember when you said some spaces are meant to be crossed?" She smiled, typing back, "I remember. Well, I think some spaces are meant to be transformed, like the space between two strangers in an elevator becoming the foundation for forever." Natalie looked out at her city, their city, touching her feather pendant and thinking about foundations and futures. She typed, "Forever's a pretty ambitious design project, Mr. Thornfield." His response made her heart soar. "Good thing I know the perfect architect, though I should warn you, I plan to request a lot of revisions, all of them involving dancing." As snow fell softly outside, Natalie curled into William's arms, thinking about elevators and endings, and how sometimes the most beautiful designs aren't drawn on paper, but written in the spaces between two hearts that choose each other, again and again, through every draft and revision of love. The end. Based on this love story between Natalie and William, which began in a stalled elevator and blossomed despite all the professional and social obstacles, I'd like to ask, if you were in Natalie's shoes, would you have chosen to follow your heart even at the risk of your professional reputation, or would you have kept your distance from William to protect the career you fought so hard for? In a world where women, especially black women, have to work twice as hard to prove their worth, do you believe that there are times when we have to choose between love and professional ambition? Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.